Kryptonite is a great example. I'm glad you mentioned it, because it's basically they did everything that you shouldn't do when you're managing an issue. They refused to talk initially. They actually disregarded the blog. The marketing director is quoted as saying they didn't really care about it. They thought it had no influence. When they were asked to speak, they lied and they were deceptive. Then when they wanted to come out, they came out 10 days later and apologised. By that time, the timeline of forgiveness had extended too far and people really didn't care. So it's a great example about how companies these days have to be aware that blogs do have influence, especially in the news cycle. They're at the start of the news cycle and at the end of the news cycle. The middle of a news cycle will always, and for a while, still be mainstream media. And Kryptonite's a great example. Once the New York Times picked up, it became mainstream. But when you look at a news cycle, the triggers and the catalysts are sometimes going to be blogs, and more and more so as it progresses on.
Yeah, I was going to say, we get to the question of why should marketers and PR people care about blogs, and at the risk of explaining to a marketing audience what I think of marketing and communications, or at least my understanding of it, part of that role has been to act as filters or gatekeepers. And this is, again, tapping into the way the media's performed. It's we'll give you the information we think you need to know. And that model is changing, this idea of openness. So then you move from being a gatekeeper on behalf of your clients to a consultant in terms of the best way to communicate, and not trying to put up a filter or a wall between the client, if you're an agency, and the public, but more saying, we need to get our client talking directly to its audience of customers and investors and so on, and what are the best ways that we should tackle that communication strategy. And the more open you are, the more honest, the more real you are as people, then all of this example proves that you'll be far more successful than if you adopt the closed model that's been historically the case.
Mazda's a good example. Mazda faked a flog?
Yeah.
A fog. Get my terms right. But Mazda pretended to have a 21-year-old writing, just having a blog, and then suddenly decided that he wanted to do some special tricks because he owned a Mazda and put up...
No, the post was he was going out for a night on the town with his friends, and he just saw this thing on public TV, on New York public TV, which was this really weird Mazda 3 TV ad. And somehow he'd managed to track them down and actually put them up on his website.
Yeah, and got destroyed for it.
People actually
smelt it.
Well, people actually found out, and suddenly within a couple of days, I mean, Mazda's advertising company pulled it very quickly because they realised that the negative reaction, and these were not ads that were thrown together quite quickly. These were ads that they had actually, these were cars breakdancing and a lot of weird effects going on. So the advertising company had spent a substantial amount of money putting these ads together. They weren't just something the creative team shot with a camera on the weekend. They'd spent a fair bit of time, a fair bit of money, and this thing fell over, and they pulled it within, I think, 3 days. But that created, look, I'm quoting things all the time, but that created a really good quote from Steve Hayden, who works for Ogilvy and Mather in New York, who's the vice chairman of Ogilvy and Mather, and he put this quote shortly after the Mazda 3 came out, and it said, "If you fudge or lie on a blog, you're biting the karmic weenie. The negative reaction will be so great that whatever your intention was, it will be overwhelmed and crushed like a bug. You're fighting with very powerful forces because it's real people's opinions." And that goes back to what Frank and the guys are saying, was that it's a powerful medium because people are getting out there and they're talking about it. And if you don't react, in Kryptonite's case, if you don't react, they'll react, they will come back even harder. If initially it was just a news post of some description, you will actually come back harder if you don't get that reaction to it. So.
Well, can I take that knowledge management one as an example? I'm a big believer in that, and I've been getting my team blogging internally because a lot of the knowledge of an organisation lives in a mail folder, right, and lives on a person's hard disk. And so if we use blogs as a way, and we actually do use blogs as a way of sharing information, all of a sudden that knowledge is there, it's searchable, it's indexable, it's findable, and it's easy to sort of get around. And when that person leaves, that knowledge doesn't go when the hard disk is erased, it's still available. So we found it as a great internal tool as a way of keeping track of information. Exactly. So knowledge management is a real big byproduct. And when I talk about the benefits of blogging to internal audiences, that's the key one I talk about, because people kind of get that. They go, oh yeah, you're right. We're not putting things in proprietary documents. We're just storing it in simple, content managed, components that can be searchable, indexed, found. It's a very powerful component of it.
I mean, the guys at Disney Channel on the broadcasting side in the States, they've been running blogs and using this technology internally for about 2.5 years now to use it as a way to update their internal staff on what's actually happening on the night shift for the engineering department. So if they're having to redo something on part of the TV network, on part of the production gear, they can actually, instead of having to post it through a normal content management system onto a site that people then have to go and visit, it's automatically being pushed down via aggregators to their tool. So people like Disney are using this as an internal tool in that knowledge management space to really help them run their business on a 24/7 nature in that broadcasting model.
If we look at our channel perspective, how does Microsoft communicate to their channel? We communicate to our channel through traditional medias. We have our events, and where we invite people and say, come along to our show, so we might get some people along. We have our direct mail that we send out and they read their inboxes. But it's kind of, people have to make an effort. Blogging is just another way. Whereas now I'm a reseller, I could subscribe to an RSS feed of all the news about channel information. That'll appear in my my news aggregator, my newsreader. I happen to run an application that plugs into Outlook, so it just appears in my Outlook. And so again, it's another channel of communication. But now I can subscribe to it. I can say, hey, I'm a reseller in the SME market, so I only get SME related stuff as opposed to effectively spam email from Microsoft about everything. So it allows me as someone in the channel as a way of possibly plugging in and connecting to the information that's of interest to me and actually having it delivered to me. So I just see it as an additional form of communication to that channel, number one. Number two, I see it, if again we use the reseller example, we can start creating a conversation amongst the resellers. We can start having the resellers communicating, posting comments, adding their own experiences through the blogging. At the end of the day, what is a blog but a content management system? That's what it is. It's a simple way of publishing. It's just a way of, it's just gotten easier today, right? In the past, I had to spend a lot of money. Now there's free services that do that. So that's, the mechanics of it have gotten simpler, and that's why more and more people are doing it. And we're going to start seeing other folks in the channels. I would love to see other parts of the Microsoft business, and I'm doing my internal evangelism within there to start getting other parts of the business to support RSS feeds, for example, around it. And we've seen examples, the Microsoft PR site has an RSS feed, so you can subscribe to all the press releases, woohoo, but it's a start, right? It's a start. It's being embraced, and so we're going to see that move forward. But, Microsoft is just as guilty as a number of other companies. They rely on outsourced partners to do a lot of this outbound communication. So it's up to the agencies and to the communication specialists who are out there who are consulting to the Microsofts and the others to sort of bring this new technology to their things. At the end of the day, the Microsoft channel guys, they're not online marketing specialists, they're channel guys, right? And they rely on other folks, and Microsoft has a number of agencies that provides that. I'm sure that, a lot of you are agencies that are providing consulting services to other corporations. And I think the onus is on you guys to say, hey, let's start using this technology and come back, because, the corporations will embrace it because they'll see. Again, at the end of the day, it's about conversation with your customers. It's about keeping people better informed, about getting the message out there. So I think, it's a bit of give and take. We're doing it on the geek side, on the technology front, because it's kind of easy, but it applies just as well in the other parts of the business. And that's my little jihad within the organisation to let them see it. It's really funny. I'll sort of do this, and I know I'm going to get in trouble for it, but RMD Steve Vamos came up to me before Christmas and said, "Hey Frank, I saw your blog. It was really good." And I thought, I was pretty chuffed, and said, I'd never get around to doing it. I said, "Steve, you should." I said, what have I got to say? And I said, you've got a lot to say. You can talk about the strategy and what we're trying to do and why Microsoft's doing what we're doing. And goes, why would people want to hear that? I said, people want to hear that. And so, it starts at the top and moves down, but, I'm a grassroots guy. I start at the grassroots and move up, and get the groundswell going.
Hey, he's selling his shirt. He's got a great shirt underneath his...
my shirt. All right. I'll unveil for the camera. Here we go. Here's my shirt. It says, I'm blogging this, and I did. At the end of the day, RSS feeds are on port 80. It's text. What's the threat? It's an interesting kind of conundrum that you face there, in terms of what they're doing. But, the thing you need to put back to these guys is, why are they in business? Why do they exist? They exist in helping your organisation reach out and help sell services or whatever it is that you're doing. And I think IT, sometimes they forget why they're around. So I think you need to put kind of make them question why it is they're there. You know, are they there to serve the business, or are they the business themselves? And the business needs to give the reasons why they should be more willing to open up.
I mean, a lot of what Frank was saying before too is like, this stuff is really simple. This is not like your old-fashioned content management systems. So the IT guys tend to have a lot of a closed-off attitude about, oh, this is something that we would normally do. It's something that we would, you know, it's going to involve another server, another this, another that, and they get all technical on everyone. And then it's like, oh, it's too hard. Well, like Frank said, this is simple. Like, you can sit here and set up a brand new blog in under 5 minutes on a free site. It's not that difficult. So it's quite a bit of a threat to the IT guys to how this stuff's done. And yes, if they want to bring it in-house and manage it properly, there are ways to do that. There are ways to meet all the corporate regulatory issues in terms of tracking what's being put on there and stuff. But it's an interesting sphere for them, because it's taking content management that was during the .com era. You know, to go out and get a content management system during that time was going to cost you 250, 300 grand. Now it's going to cost me nothing to get something up and running in 5 minutes. So it puts a whole different spin on it from there.
But just on that matter with the Department of Education, it's interesting because that's always the top-down approach. It's interesting to see what will happen in years to come, as Frank said, with the grassroots, where your students and your teachers start their own blogs, their own groundswell, and start questioning exactly what that's happening.
Well, can I just add on that, teachers? You know, my kid last year's in grade 5. I went in, you know, and he's got a blog. Right, so his teacher, who was, you know, she's 60, but she gets technology, she asked me to come and speak to the class on blogging. So I went in there to these grade 5 kids, and I talked to them about it. And, you know, I used Blogger to sign them all up, and most of them signed up, and they put up photos of their favourite kids and their cats, and they got started communicating amongst themselves, and it was a very easy thing to do, you know. And so, you know, it is going to happen from the grassroots, because you know what, those kids are going to be out there demanding things very soon. They're going to drive this.
Yeah, and actually it's a good point, because you're talking about issues of cultural change, regardless of the blog itself. It's how do you get an entire organisation to think differently, and to think differently about the way it communicates with each other. And we're going through that at IDG. We've just launched 2 blogs for internal use. And I won't tell you the address because I don't want you to hack them. But the point being, once people get familiar with this technology, they're posting internally, it takes away that the hesitation and the nervousness you have about the concept of posting and who will read it, and, you know, am I going to get in trouble? And, you know, and it becomes much more of a... email is a great example. It's something that you do. It's just, you know, I can't imagine not blogging. I can't imagine not reading content via an RSS feed. It becomes a habit. It becomes the way you communicate.
Okay, so in this particular one, you know, MSN, they sort of launched this Spaces area. So to sign up, you click on the old Sign Up Now button. It's you know, it's pretty hard. And what MSN's done is they've really connected this to the other Microsoft properties. So Messenger is kind of connected, Hotmail, all those other areas. So in this case, you need to sign in with your Hotmail passport, or your passport if you happen to have one.
There's a lot of talk on this on blogs when it was first released, wasn't it, Frank?
Yeah, there was a lot of buzz. Yeah, because really what, you know, this is a good entry-level point for people who want to start trying what this experience is. And again, it connects it into things like Messenger. A lot of people are using Messenger. And so it's a way of having your friends. You know, a lot of people say, who's going to read my blog, right? How are they going to know about it? Well, if you think about Messenger, you've got your friends list. All of a sudden, if you update your blog, there's a little glyph, a little star appears in that buddy list that says, the blog's been updated, and all of a sudden there's a connection between your circle of interest, your community of friends that you have, and the actual process. So here, you know, create a name for your space.
I mean, this was quite powerful. It just shows, you know, talking like if there's 34 million or 30 million blogs in the world, within, I think it was 4 weeks, Spaces had 1 million blogs set up on it around the world. So within a 4-week period, there were an extra 1 million people actually blogging out there.
Yeah, so this was actually trialled in Japan, and they had many millions of people signed up, and then they took the concept and moved it forward. So there we go, congratulations, so now you can do it. So let's go edit, you know, you can edit your space settings, customise, go to your space, you know. You can publish, so just go to... Edit? Edit, you can change it. So if you go to edit, you can change the look and feel, you can change the themes, the colours, you can change the layout, you know. Again, it's a content management system. For people in the audience that know what that is, this is what this is. It's just a large-scale, you know, multi-tenanted CMS. So that's what it boils down to.
There's many examples of CEOs and managing directors and leaders of public companies and private companies around the world that use blogs to talk to their audience, and however you want to define that. in that particular case where you've been misquoted, the great thing about a blog is you can correct the record. You can say, look, I've been quoted by this journalist and I meant to say this and I meant to, it should be rephrased in this particular way. You've got a direct connection with the same audience. So it's not, it's going to be a case of you no longer have to hope that the journalist is going to take your call and run a correction. You can do it yourself.
There's another point to it, and the point is not everyone's reading blogs, but the people who are reading blogs are sneezers. Do you like that term? They're going to spread, right? It's word of mouth. That one person that reads my blog may tell another 10 people about what they read, and those 10 people are going to tell another 10 people, and guess what? It spreads, right? So it's the sneezing that's not mine. That's Seth Godin's line. Seth is a big thinker, and he comes up with a great bunch of lines like that one. So it's about getting that. It's finding the sneezers who can spread that idea virus or whatever it is you want to say around. And I think that's if you think about it, who's reading blogs right now, it is the early adopters. So we're talking to the early adopters, and what do early adopters do? They tell other people about the stuff that they found. So I'm using my personal blog, for example, as an early adopter around a new Foxtel digital PDR, the Foxtel IQ. You know what? I'm going to slam Foxtel if I have to, or I'm going to be positive about it. But I'm going to use that as a way of talking about my experiences as a consumer, not as a Microsoft guy, as a consumer with this product. And maybe someone from Foxtel will read it. I doubt it. But a lot of other people will read it, and that may help them decide to buy it or not buy it, and create a groundswell around it.
It comes down to people. It comes back to this sort of niched content idea that it's information that matters to me. So it's that old marketing 20-80 rule. 20% of your market's going to create 80% of your revenue or 80% of your conversation or whatever you want to call it. So by having the blog, you're limiting who you actually are talking to, because you're not talking to everyone. You're not getting that reach that a traditional PR message going out via a press release, going out to a newspaper, the Sydney Morning Herald, who then is going to blah, 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 put something out there in some form of advertorial or editorial, whatever you want to call it. It's really reaching people who are interested in your particular product. So whether they're interested from a good bias or a bad bias, there's still people who are interested in your product. It's not going out to a generic audience that really doesn't care about it.
Yeah, to me it's just another part of the marketing mix. Another thing we just have to consider. It's not the be all and end all, but it's just something else we have to consider. And importantly, make sure, and if you're a company, be smart about it. Don't try and fudge it, don't try and lie, and make sure that your messages are congruent right across all your streams and all your mediums that you're using. Just because you've got a blog, make sure whatever you say on your blog is exactly what you are reflecting in your press release, what you're saying at interviews. It's got to be the same all the way through. And you still have to put it in your own terms and have it in language that is going to be user-friendly and usable. But don't hide behind the fact that it is a corporate blog either. Don't fog.
Don't flog it.
Flog it. I love it.
Don't flog it.
Otherwise you'll sneeze.
Correct. In a bad way.
The sheer nature of the way blogging works and the way that the community is sort of structured, there's a lot of linkage going on. There's a lot of, I read something on Frank's blog, so I'll write about it on my blog and I'll point to Frank's blog, and then Mark will read something about it and he might put it on. So there's a lot of internal blogging communication going on where people are linking to each other. And that works incredibly well for tools like Google and MSN Search and all these other search engines that are out there. They love the way that these blogs work. They just love the way that this interlinking goes on. So they're really good at picking up the messages and the stories inside them. My personal blog, Splack's blog, which is sort of like a technology blog, gets picked up. I mean, for a while there I thought, I've been playing with it for 2 or 3 years. It's fun, it's interesting, it's got a couple of 100 readers. And then at some point, the middle of last year, it suddenly ended up, because of linkage from people, a couple of tech guys in the States, particularly a guy called Robert Scoble who works for Microsoft, who's one of the big internal bloggers at Microsoft. A couple of links from him to relevant articles that I'd put up there. Suddenly my traffic was hitting 5,000, 6,000 unique people a month, to the point where I'm now getting between 10 and 15,000 unique readers a month to my blog. And I'm getting that from 171 different countries around the world last month. So I'm getting everything from the US, through Australia, through China, through North Korea. So talking about how it goes out in some of these countries and where you've got governments that are clamping down on stuff. I've got people from North Korea. Why they're hitting my blog, I have no idea, but I've got people from North Korea reading about some of the tech stuff that I'm writing about. So it's interesting to see that, and the way they're getting access to this stuff is through Google, is through the fact that this technology out there is really easy to be, can be indexed really, really easily.
Yeah, the more you write, the more likely you're going to get picked up by search engines, particularly if you write across a diverse range of topics. Likewise, I've got the same experience with my blog. I get a lot of referrals from Google, and people will be looking for a particular subject. They'll search and they'll get your listing. They'll click, particularly if you're in the top, 3 to 5 hits or search results. Now, of course, the trick then, and there's a whole another discussion about how you optimize blogs and content for Google. I won't go there except to say that as a blogger, one of the things you need to think about is if somebody does stumble across your blog, how can you get them to come back again? And you need to make it really easily accessible and very quick in terms of how you design your blog, so that they can find out who you are, what you write about, and why should I come back again. And bringing those sort of elements into it can help you in the long run.
Look, my biggest closing comment, I guess, is, start reading blogs. Is the simply, consume first. Be a lurker and see what's being said, and then if you want to jump in. But do it at initially at a personal level, and then learn about it that way, and then take it forward. I think that's the simplest way. But don't talk about it, do it. Is my closing comment.
Yeah, considering this is the first sort of forum of its kind in Australia, I think it's important that companies realise that there are blogs out there and they can influence and impact your organisation, and just start to just educate yourself and educate the company around you to the power of them, how we can use them, how we can protect ourselves if there are issues that arise on them, and get advice from people who know what they're talking about.